Hello, hello. Good morning. Welcome back to this. Welcome again to this Friday live. Now, I was ill last week, or I would have done it then. I intend to do this as like an extra Friday show every single week here on Big Up, where what I want to do is run through all the stories from the past week. Obviously, as we get closer to summer, that's going to become this could be a 3 hour show. Um, but it could be a really long one. But I want to do it here. Something's up with the microphone. Is it really? Is it delayed? Um, Let me see which one it's being used. Hopefully that's not a should be the right one. It should be okay now. Hopefully it's fine now. But yeah, I want to do this every week and it could be a long one. Um we did one 2 weeks ago. It was a lot of fun. It might have been just as I loaded in. That sometimes does happen. No problem. Thank you guys. But yes, if you're watching on YouTube or something on this recording, I definitely recommend coming to the live on Big Up because it's just a fun platform. And one of the reasons we're doing it here is the wonderful people at a Big Up that are setting up this platform as it's still in beta and it's still being developed. Essentially, want to add really cool features that we can use, similar to when we do the watch alongs, how they have the tactics board and replays that we do, things like that. They're building this out to be the place to go to hang out for football shit, which is pretty cool and makes for something kind of unique. So hopefully that is the case. A lot of fun that it will be. So yeah, there's a lot to discuss this week. And I was kind of lining up all of the articles, all the pieces, all of the aggregation from the week. And there's certainly a theme, I gotta say. There's definitely a theme about, um what was in the news this week, which is kind of interesting. When we go through it, you'll start to think, you know, there's not so much smoke without fire on there, isn't there? About what's happening right now. So we can make some assumptions. Obviously, I've got my own information, and when I look at through all of this stuff, then I will obviously give my take and my feedback and my views on it as well from the last week. So if I miss anything, if I miss any stories in here as we're watching live, you can definitely point me in the right direction so that I can go find it and pull it up and talk about it in case I missed anything. It's that's one of the things, by the way, from a features perspective that I hope that they'll help me with sometimes is there a good way to utilize the tools to kind of summarize and put this all together? Please don't talk about transfers. Chelsea might be listening. uh, they really are, aren't they? They really are, aren't they? It's all this talk about Quenda. We screwed the whole deal up. We all screwed the whole deal up with all this Quenda talk. That's the reason he's not joining us, isn't it? Um, what a bummer. Let me just pull one more thing up really quick, and then we'll get into our first story. The first one is kind of basic. It's not particularly, I think, that interesting to most people, but let's check it out. There we go. Let's see. Let me make sure I've got this set up right. All right. I can't read the whole article, but this was from James Ducker early at the end of last week or the beginning of this week. Um, Senior Manchester United official and framed for a top job. Newcastle, Colette Roche, currently CEO at Old Trafford, is among the candidates to replace Darren Eales as chief executive. So Newcastle trying to um, Newcastle trying to take our executive away. Now, the interesting thing about Colette Roche is she's quite literally the only surviving individual at the executive level at Manchester United and has even kind of gained in influence and such. Now, one of the big reasons for that is as far as I know, is to do with the stadium. This more of a slightly outside football aspect that fits within her field of expertise more and development, and she has obviously worked with the city in Manchester and things like that. Obviously, this is also one of the main reasons Newcastle, I believe, want her, is because of they're looking at a new stadium and all of that. That being said, she was also recently, yes, thank you, Amy, for that. She was also very recently um, given more of an oversight over the team. And as you correctly stated there, Roche was quoted on the Mark Skinner renewal for the women's team a few days ago. And that is obviously one of the pieces of semi-significant news that did occur um, this week. I was trying to find the actual like one on the United site, but I'll just pull it up on an article and we'll look at that in a second because you're correct there. Let me just see if I can find this here. Yeah, there we go. I'll pull this up in a second so I can show that quote as well. Um, but yeah, Newcastle obviously kind of chasing her. I think United will certainly not want to let her go. Let's put it that way. Um, I really don't think that they'll be wanting to let her go. So yeah, let's pull up that on Skinner. Nice, it worked very smoothly. So yes, I don't know. Okay. Man United boss Mark Skinner signs a new deal to June 2027, so a couple more years. Option of an extra year. I think that he's got his statement here. United are third. They're not that bad. They're actually doing decently well this season, I think, right? We're playing in the FA Cup semifinals, third in the league. Not that far off the top. I mean, decent. United certainly, I would hope, moving forward, do more on the women's side because I feel there's a lot of potential there, right? For United to actually become a quite a strong team. And obviously it doesn't take that much in terms of finances to boost the women's team up, quite a bit. And long term, obviously, as we get a new stadium, as their goal was to have the women's team play in the same stadium, that could be huge for the finances of the women's team and have it be very self-funding and become the biggest, biggest women's team in England, which hopefully it should be. Um, he's just not popular with online, and I've heard that he's not super popular, but he seems to be doing at least a decent job. I mean, I think maybe he was being blamed, or maybe there was an aspect of thinking he was the reason some of the players left. But United seemed to be doing kind of okay. Maybe better than okay on the women's side, quite decent, all things considered for the amount that they're offering. But yes, you're correct. Now they've misnamed her as CEO here. She is not the CEO; she's the COO. But her quotes here. It's an important part. I do am glad that they're getting more executives commenting on the women's side of it, even just for appearances. I think it certainly helps, doesn't it? Um, yeah. So cool. So that's good. So that's a good story there. Um, but yeah, I think United will obviously want to fight to keep her. If you could 30, 40,000 fans a match at the women's game in 5 to 10 years, it would be great for the club as a whole. Yes, it would. I definitely agree. Have we moved into our new training ground? I assume you're meaning Carrington, or are you talking about like the Carrington upgrades? But it will be. It's a recent change. Omar has been as well. It's good for PR. I agree, and I think it's just like the more attention you give the women's team, the more support they will get too. So I think it's really a good thing that they've recognized this because Sir Jim, obviously, his comments come across sometimes too callous on this, right? But if you have the people within the football club doing the right things, that helps. I don't think Sir Jim necessarily intends to be that callous on it, but he is. He also makes pretty callous comments about the men's team and the players on there. So I think that's more how he is than it should be taken as an insult. Um, but it's good that the executives in charge are discussing it more and more, talking about it more, and being involved more. I think that's only a good thing. And hopefully, once things settle in, there will be even more attention put on it as well. Let's move on to the next topic here. This was a picture. This is from Laurie. This is not yesterday, by the way. I mean, this is just when the screenshot was. But this was earlier in the week. and he was talking about midfielder. Now, I'm really happy to that there is a journalist talking transfers who is speaking about the midfield and signing a midfielder. I did a whole video on midfielders, and I laid out like 6 good targets, um, for the I laid out like 6 good targets for this attacking 8 position in an Amarim midfield, and I explained what he wanted out of it, out of that position, and finally, every year I feel like this happens. I say, "Hey, we're looking at midfielders," and we are, but it feels like the powers that be don't want a midfielder, and we underappreciate the need for midfield signings, when it should be a much more important. And then, the way I kind of look at news sometimes is I hear a lot of stuff that's like really early doors. Like, we're just looking. And then once it starts to get to like more decision making time, we start to hear it from more journalists, people like Laurie, the Athletic, these types of journalists. So even though when I know we're looking at midfielders and I can come up with 8 names, when I'm not hearing it from these other journalists, it worries me that it's not getting far enough along in the decision making process to be something to be paid attention to. We've heard so much talk of striker, and we'll run through a ton of shit on that in this video, but very little on the midfield. So even this comment alone is a good one. I believe Amarim wants at least one athletic number 8. Clearly, the plan is developed from when Ten Hag was manager, but equally United want good players first and foremost. Their exact positions can be tailored. So looking at that video I did on midfielders, a lot of the names that I was talking about fit that. The the guy who, right now where Bruno is playing, one of the downsides, and this was, I think, very apparent against Forest, um, in the second half when Ugarte came off, is that Bruno, this is not a commentary on Bruno. I still strongly believe they wanna move Bruno further up. He's not really a combative midfielder at all, even when he plays in that deeper role. He's solving a lot of our build-up issues, but in the long term, when we have progressive center backs back, if Lissandro was back, you'd want him further forward, and you want a more, physical, more athletic, more all action, and more combative midfielder in that midfield too. It gets opened up really, really fast. Um, um, so we'll see. We'll see here. Based on the question, it reads more like one of the eights needs to be athletic and not necessarily wants to sign. Well, yes, but I think that within the context of it, it's not saying we have anybody who fits it, if you know what I mean. Um, like I said, I think we could do more. Um, I think I still want to hear more about plans on a midfielder, but I think when Laurie's saying I believe he wants at least one athletic number 8, he's not saying we have one. He's saying we don't have one. Now could that solution come from within? Could that be, Sekou Kone? For sure. There's other possibilities, but obviously, and it also says equally United want good players first and foremost. Their exact positions can be tailored. So I think is really indicating we want to add someone from somewhere to this who is not maybe we don't have right now. That's how I would take it, or who's not in that necessarily position, right now. Bruno is I don't know what I would call him. I'm not sure I'd call him athletic, right? He's not particularly fast, and all of that, but he's obviously done better and better. But I still think we lose quite a bit from the athletic and combative standpoint when he's deep, especially when it's not with Ugarte, and that works for the slower games, the European games potentially, but obviously in the Premier League, we've seen when we go against good teams that they can easily get run through pretty well. But we'll see. We will see as well. Um, but at least we're hearing a little bit about this, and hopefully that means we will be, if the budget can stretch to it, move to, that kind of signing. Speaking on midfielders, do you think we will sell or loan Collier? He would be pure profit. Um, and he would be pure profit. And I think there's a decent chance, yeah. Because if you look at our midfield right now, we need to make signings where I guess Collier isn't playing, and I'm not saying that makes him a bad player, but in an ideal world, we have better players, right? Like, we have players who are like, we really want people competing to be starters. That's the quality we need across the board. Um, so potentially, I mean, it depends on how they view him. We'll see how much he plays through the end of the season, and if he comes on and grows more as a player. You know, there's things he does all right, but I think at the moment he's still mostly just used as like a bit of legs when we need him, and that's not necessarily a like you don't necessarily want to be in a position where that's all you're getting from a player, but we'll see. We'll see. I'm not trying to play him down either. Then I'll so let's move on to the next thing. Amir Ibrahimov has signed his first pro contract. This happened actually just yesterday, so that's a good thing. Another young talent that United want to keep, that United want to develop, and all of that. Who would replace Collier there? Koning seems to be more of a defensive eight than a pure six. Yes, and would tend to agree with that. I think that at the same time, yeah, I don't know, and that's a good point too. And from a positional standpoint, that Collier probably will be below, um, like is somewhat of Ugarte's backup. But then you have to think if we do sell Casemiro, we'll probably buy an Ugarte rotation, backup rotation, other option. And then what need do we have for Collier? Because Casemiro is kind of the Ugarte rotation right now. Need to consider homegrown players as well, as we'll be selling, losing a number of them. Yeah, um, that's a point, and I was looking at that earlier. One of the simple solutions is we have a smaller squad with more academy kids, because some of the kids who come through the academy can be registered. You don't have to, but you can register them to meet the homegrown requirement. And obviously, that means they take up a squad spot. But I don't think we'll intend to have 25 seniors anyway. Um, so usually you'll have like a keeper, Maguire, Shaw, and Mount are all homegrown for next season. I feel like Ahmad counts, but now I can't remember. Maguire, Shaw, Mount, a keeper. Um, I feel like Maguire counts. Kobe Mainu. Um, that's 5. I think we need 7. So we could always just register 2 academy kids, even if Garnacho leaves, who's also I think counts as well. I can't remember. Ahmad does not. You're right. Yeah, he didn't actually meet the mark for 3 years. Um, but we do have other academy players who would soon. Actually, Aiden Heaven is it homegrown, isn't he? Because he was trained at Arsenal. Um, Aiden Heaven is homegrown, is he not? I believe he would qualify because he was at Arsenal for three years. Um, yeah, so Heaven is, so that would give us another. That's 6. Uh, and then we probably register a couple young players. He doesn't need to be registered, but my point is you can. Like, you can just register those players because we may not need that many spots available, you know what I'm saying? Like, we just may not need them. It may be unnecessary to have that many senior spots filled up. Um, like, we're not gonna use 25 players, you know what I mean? So there's that. And then there was this from earlier in the week, speaking more on the academy, and I think this is really notable. Because I've been kind of hinting, talking, all of that. Um, um, for a while on our academy recruitment and some of the names that could be there. It says Manchester United's academy recruitment department are gearing up for an ambitious summer transfer window as they look to bring some of the country's biggest talents to Carrington. Preliminary work has begun for a number of highly rated players. United are hoping to be a competitive force in the market comparable with that of Manchester City and Chelsea in recent years. Last summer's deal to sign Cheeto Obi represents the standard of player the club are aiming to recruit. So I think there's a wide variety of hints dropped in this statement that is somewhat intentionally vague, and I'm not criticizing him for that. I understand, and I know why, and I think that he's left plenty of hints in there. Um, but as it speaks to this homegrown requirement and the squad size, one of the advantages of having the smaller squad and using the academy to fill them up is you you need one of the ways we can recruit well in the youth market right now is this pathway, right? One of the reasons we could get Aiden Heaven is saying, look, you're going to go into the first team. We don't have enough center backs. You're going to get on the pitch, and you did, and he will again soon. One of the reasons we were able to get Cheeto Obi is the same reason. Well, there's more positions like that. Um, and I think it's the surest sign that there's probably more sales to come because we want to open these pathways, you know. So yeah, like if it was someone like Max Dowman, you'd want to tell them there's a spot at 10 open for you, right? Um, and that doesn't necessarily mean they have to be starting today. They could be the backup for now. So, I guess we'll see there, but there's other talents as well. United, when you kind of look at it in the long term, if you look at our forwards, this is where it gets kind of crazy, right? If you look at our forwards, we have Hoyland who's underperforming, Xerxes who's maybe a 10, um, Bruno who's a little bit deep, but also is older. And when you're signing youth players, you do factor in Bruno's age. Okay. Like when I say, hey, that 10 position might be open, that might be Bruno's spot. But 2 years from now, is Bruno going to be a day in, day out starter? Probably not. There is a maybe, but there's a point Bruno will slow down. But you're also talking about you're talking about a couple of years down the road for these to be like regular players. That could be you are wanting to find Bruno's replacement. And again, I'm not saying that as a criticism of Bruno right now because he's been very good. But you are looking today, if you're smart, you're looking today for a Bruno level talent for 2 years from now. You have to. You have to. You cannot plan any other way. Look at Kevin De Bruyne, by the way. Okay. It's poignant because of course he's announced he's leaving City and he's probably going to go to some semi-retirement league. Um, Kevin De Bruyne was one of the most robust, fittest, and best players for a long time. Now Bruno has outdone him from an age standpoint in terms of staying fit, no doubt about that. But De Bruyne was easily one of the fittest and most hardest working players in the Premier League for quite a long time, and one of the best midfielders of all time. There's a point. The injuries hit him suddenly, and it was like f- flip the switch. Suddenly, he cannot make it on the pitch, and we saw that happen a couple years ago. I'm not saying that'll happen to Bruno, but it does happen. Time catches up to him. Now, maybe he'll be like Modric and he'll play literally for fucking ever without having those issues. Maybe he will, but you still want a starter. You still need a young player coming in there um, for that kind of spot. And so, when you think of this, you think with Bruno, who's older, Xerxes, Hoyland, Garnacho not performing, Ahmad, who could be at wing back. You could sign a number 10, a striker, and have a spot for a really good young player. And you might be moving some of those players on. So yeah, there's a lot there, and maybe otherwise too. Maybe otherwise as well. There's some good options that could be available. Now you'll notice a theme here as we get into the next bunch of stuff here, but um, this is from um, yeah, yes, Bruno started a little bit later on in his time. De Bruyne did play early, but Bruno's already lasted longer from an age perspective, I believe. I think Kevin De Bruyne. I don't know what age he was 2 years or 3 years ago when he started really picking up those injuries. Maybe it was about 2 years ago, but it did. The switch went boom, and then suddenly he can't be healthy anymore. Um, Now we're going to get into a lot of these. Ekitike. This is from Pletty Goal. Now, the only reason I would mention this one is that it's also been mentioned by Fabrizio, and it's also been mentioned by what's the word? Um, by Wheeler. Can Dowman join before he's 16? So I'm not super up on the rules, but When did the Fletcher brothers join? I don't know what his contract situation is right now exactly, but I know that in the next bit of time, like the next 6 to 9 months, he's got to decide where he wants to be it Arsenal or somewhere else, okay? Maybe it's January, I don't really know the details of it, but in the next 6 to 9 months, he has to decide because he'll either kind of be locked in to Arsenal or go somewhere else, and that's the decision that's being made. Whatever the details of that, I don't know, but I do know that that's kind of the circumstances surrounding his situation right now. But yeah, more links to Ekitike. Yeah, a lot move at 16 because it's before then you go and sign your pro contract at 17, right? Like a year later. Right. Scholars, then to professional right. So scholars, yeah. So right at 16. So whenever he turns 16, it's probably the decision. Do I do the, do I sign, with Arsenal and then go to a pro contract pro contract in a year? But a lot of players tend to want to settle at 16 where they're going to sign their pro contract. So that's where the decision gets made essentially, and that's what's upcoming essentially for for uh for Max Dowman. And I don't think he's the only one, mind you, but yeah. So I think it would be like like a summer thing or a winter thing, right? So in January he'd be saying, "Do I stay at Arsenal or do I go somewhere else?" But there's other people. It's not necessarily Max Baumann. There's other ones. There's other ones too. There's other players out there in England. So yeah, Ekitike, he's clearly kind of showing up as an option for United and that they really like. We've been following Ekitike a long time. I had good links to him like 3 years ago before he moved to PSG, I think it was. He's had a bit of a funky career. He's still young, he's still really good. But the cost associated is big. The cost associated is quite big. Um, and that would be the main concern that we would have. Now, as we kind of go through all the striker things, I think we'll get a picture of maybe the top targets starting to really narrow down. Um, and there's this story. Now, this comes from an individual in South America who actually, I believe him and the other individual mentioned here are quite good for South America. Now, this was a bit prescient. This was on March 31, and there's some story today that we'll get to at the towards the end of the recap, but it says Alejandro Garnacho could leave in the next transfer window. Ruben Amorim counts on him, but prefers other players in the position. In the past market, he held negotiates with Napoli and Chelsea. Now, United are looking at a 10. They're looking at a striker in the window. Um, so got to cover bases. Well, I'm not saying that they're going for Max Dowman right now. That's not what I'm just not saying it, but people are asking questions about him. But yeah, I don't want things to get aggregated out of context either. But yeah, so Garnacho could leave in the next window. Obviously, we're looking at players on over the top of him. Frankly, we're looking at another 10. And we were looking at a number 9. That guy at Leicester too, everyone wants, correct? There's a name there. There's a couple others as well. And so, I think it's pretty clear. One thing is very clear. If we sign the players we're expecting to, Alejandro Garnacho is not a starter next season, is he? Because he's failed to nail down a place on the left. We might be Bruno, it might be Xerxes there, it might be Mainu. We've already got Mount, we've got Ahmad. If we make another signing at the 10, at the players we're looking at signing, and we expect to, he's not going to be a starter. Now, I can say for an absolute certainty that when he's not been a starter, he's looked for moves. He wants to be somewhere where he's playing and starting. Last season he was looking at a move when he was not a starter at the first half of the season. Um, he was considering a move this January. He will consider a move again this summer, and some decisions have to be made there. So we'll get to some further stories in a minute that kind of tie into this. And this was from The Athletic, as there was a story about Gyökeres going to Arsenal. And it was said, okay, well, what effect does that have on the striker market? And this is from Laurie saying, the link between Gyökeres and blah blah blah, that we're probably not signing Gyökeres, that we probably never were, which is correct. Then it says, who might they go for instead? and he talks quite a bit here about Delap, about Wilcox being a fan, having worked with him. Um, he holds an appeal, all of that. It mentions Sheshko, but we'll get to that in a minute. Sheshko's one I've been played down myself, and there's a story today that plays Sheshko down as well that I don't think that would happen. Then it says United's tight budget is a major factor in many options, including Victor Osimhen, whose wages would be unacceptable. Then it says some kind of swap deal might make that deal more financially palatable, with Napoli holding an interest in Alejandro Garnacho. So you get another little mention of striker and Alejandro Garnacho in his situation that potentially, those two things could factor in. Um, We've got this story that Borussia Dortmund are interested once again in signing Jadon Sancho for a third time to replace Jamie Gittins, who's expected to move. Now, one of the things that I've heard interestingly from a few places is that, United have still kind of expected Chelsea to complete the purchase of Sancho. I know there's this clause, but it isn't necessarily viewed as a good thing for Chelsea to break an obligation even by using one of those clauses, um, for reputation in the market and all of that. Um, United still are leaning that he's going to be purchased by Chelsea, but I would also add that there's decently accurate talk out there that Chelsea might buy him and sell him to Dortmund, and there'll be a way that they structure it that it actually works out for them profitably. That at least that's the plan. So I would not be surprised should Chelsea do it and then sell him on and make a small profit. Um, so yeah, isn't Ahmad the right wing back? Why are we including in conversations of Ahmad at 10? I feel like that's dependent on Montato's progress at right wing back. Yes and no. I mean, there's going to be games Dallo plays right wing back too. Montato certainly is a factor in that, but there's going to be games for Dallo as well. There's going to be games where Amram says is happy with Dallo. Dallo's still going to be a player for us, very likely. He had a much better game. I think he's been better on the right as the season's gone on. I think he has when he's gotten barely any games on the right, but I think he's actually done okay there. He did pretty well against Forest. I thought he was decent. He will get games on the right because he's reliable, and that matters. So, there's still going to be games. Ahmad is at the 10, and long term, I think Ahmad will be at the 10, and Mentato will become our first choice right wing back. But you always want to have options as well. So yeah, so this on Sancho is kind of interesting. Then Laurie went again on Stretford Paddock to do a video, and he spoke again about Liam Delap being a good interest, but also once again spoke about Victor Osimhen, mentioning that there is a chance, that because of this Garnacho swap, that it kind of changes it, where Gyökeres was expensive, wages high, all of that. Then what makes the difference with Osimhen is United may have this make weight in Garnacho. So it's, there's a lot, and I've added to the story plenty myself about Osimhen, saying that he is an option. He is someone they really do like. They're not like super active on it. They're not, but they do really like him. And the biggest factor in this is that if they could get into Champions League, or if they can, if there is a big offer for Garnacho, then it makes it suddenly quite feasible as a deal that could get done, that could give United a better striker than the options that are out there, potentially. But it's not something that's very, you know, super active at the moment. Um, then there's this story talking about Xavi Simons. Now, one of the things I mentioned in a video earlier this week is that when they decided not to go for Quenda, they said, "Hey, let's shift our budget to the forward line a bit more." Where they were initially kind of looking at Quenda and a striker, it kind of shifted to, why don't we go a 10 and a striker? Now, if they go more affordable at striker for somebody like Liam Delap for 40 million, um, with some departures if they get decent money for Rashford, or Garnacho could be sold and it has nothing to do with Osimhen, it has nothing to do with the striker. Maybe it leaves more budget for the 10. Then, you've got your cheaper ones, your Dorgeluses that are maybe 20 to 30 million. You've got your Roger Fernandez's that are probably in the same range. But what if you have more money to spend? Well, United have players they really like, and one of them is Xavi Simons. They've liked him for a long time, but he's quite expensive. So, this could be a place where if there's more money to spend, that they look to this again. Would there not be issues with Garnacho's book value if we were to include in a swap deal? Don't worry about swaps. Think of it as a sale and a sale. Don't worry about swaps. Sale and a sale. So Simone's could be a more expensive, a bigger option at the 10 potentially. So that is a possibility there. Someone that they really like in the past, that they have even tried to get on loan a few times in the past. And so that would just be one to keep in mind if we end up with more money in that position. The current top target is Dibbling, but the asking price for him is crazy. I think I've covered that, but although I didn't do a video last week, there were stories that they wanted 100 million for Dibbling. Well, United aren't going to go anywhere near that, for sure. There's no doubt about that. They probably are looking in the 30 to 40 range for most players that they want to sign this summer, including someone like Dibbling. Then there's this story. I have no idea if this is a good story or not. I have no idea, but Hincapi is a center back United do like, and he's one that fits really, really well, obviously, into the system. I think I did a video a long time, like months ago, saying if you were to pick like one of the perfect players, he was one of the names that came up. And I have no idea if the story's any good though, like if there's been anything like that, but he's perfect for a progressive, but also athletic wide center back. He's perfect. Or center back for a back three. He's perfect. So yeah, be nice. Release clause of 42 million. If we have the money, maybe, we could do something with this. I think to spend this much at center back, it's going to require sales or Champions League, though. Otherwise, we're going much smaller at center back because we've got Yoro, we've got Mazraoui, we've got who's the other one? Right, Delict. We've got Maguire for another year, and then we've got Heaven and Lissandro's injured. Now, the thing about it is that Lissandro's injured, Heaven has played one game, and Maguire will leave after a year. We do need to sign center backs, or next summer we're going to be chasing two or three. But if Heaven works out, I strongly doubt that Lissandro can be the player he was after all of this. And that's not it was unfortunate because he was really getting into a rhythm as well, but now another massive injury. I just feel it's impossible. There's already some doubts on size and things like that, but it just feels impossible. So I think after next season, we may only have four center backs. Yoro and Mazraoui is kind of a center back. He's a back three center back, but we may only have four for three positions. We really do need to sign one this summer or next summer. It could become a massive priority, or next year, if Lissandro's not fit, if there's any further injury things, we could have a serious problem on our hands. So I think we want to sign one, but I think that it'll be based on um, it's either going to be another young one like a Jimenez or Akcicek or something like that, but it's going to be kind of based on funds really there. Braithwaite, we've talked about, maybe someone like Hincape as well could be an option. Um, how high is Kukonki rated? It's really hard to say at the moment. He needs to play more. He's young. He's got the physical traits. He's young. He needs to play more. He probably fits really well into that left center back. He played left back in the Youth Cup game, but we'll see. We'll see. We will definitely see that over time where we get to. Then there was shit. I missed it. Let me find this again. There was news here. Another striker piece that was sort of covering the entire Premier League on strikers, and it says it once again is talking about Delap, and it's saying that again we really like him. However, hold on, let me try to find the relevant piece here. By the way, Darwin Nunez, it would be an interesting move for him. Just keep an eye on it. Is Nottingham Forest? Just keep an eye on that. There's some general notes here. Ekitike grew up supporting Manchester United. Where's the name? Maybe it's at the beginning, because it was saying, who was it talking about? It says Manchester United appear have dropped off the list as a realistic destination for Benjamin Šeško. Now, we'll just kind of take it at face value that maybe Šeško is not such a valid option. Then there's where is he? Is Mateta on? I swear there was something on Mateta in this. Maybe it's near the bottom. Um, so yeah, that was Sheshko. Blah, blah, yada yada. We're not really specifically linked to anybody else. We weren't specifically linked to David or anything like that. Then there's Mateta, and it says various clubs have made initial inquiries, no formal offers. He was linked to Manchester United, but they're not thought to be one of the clubs who have presented serious interest to sign him. So I would imagine it indicates we have a minor interest, but not a serious one. So if you top up all the striker news together, kind of in the video I was saying yesterday, I get the concept I get is Osimhen is like the expensive, maybe difficult to obtain one that we have to see where we're going towards the end of the season. Delap is the more realistic option. And you could just start there and we'd probably get one of the two, more likely Delap, right? Behind that, we're probably more looking at there's Ekitike, but he's also very expensive. So if we have the money, but we can't get Osimhen, maybe Ekitike. And then behind that, you have these young links that I have to these other, Vivel type of strikers that we could bring in that are more likely. And then you have a wild card like Agahawa, who's not being mentioned much, but I know United have watched and is a good player, but would also be very expensive. But it's kind of narrowing the field, I think, pretty small into the likelihood of who we could get. Now, could we become serious for Mateta? If we didn't get Delap and we didn't have money, I think yes. That's the difference there. We don't wanna we would much I think we'd much rather get Delap than Mateta from an age standpoint, right? Um, but if we were to miss out, then I think that might change the Mateta thing because 'cause we're interested, but not seriously at this point. What about Darwin Nunez? No, we're not gonna sign Darwin Nunez. Then there's this, and I gotta share this because obviously it ties into everything else. It's true, okay? Look, this is true. Whether whatever the outlet is that is reporting it, it is true. Just ignore the dramatic headlines and all that, but Man United star Alejandro Garnacho secretly puts 3.85 million mansion on sale, and major hint he's ready to quit Red Devils. Now, Richard Moriarty was the one who had a ton of stories as well on Mason Greenwood. He is well connected with a lot of the things around the players up in the Northwest in the Manchester and Liverpool area. He has listed his house for sale. I think the notable thing here is just that when you look at all the stories together, he has listed his house. You got the story earlier in the week that he was very likely to move from South America. You got that. You got obviously the story as well that we just covered about Napoli still have an interest. Maybe he could be swapped, something like that. Um, so it is what it is. We don't want to just take this and say, oh, it means something it doesn't. But when you kind of piece everything together and look at it, obviously it starts to paint a bit of a picture that's not totally ignorable. He's looked for moves. He's was nearly moved to Napoli in the window. Um, there's talk of him leaving. He may not be, we're looking at tens and we're looking at strikers. He could be included as part of a deal to bring Osimhen. He's putting his house up for sale 1 year after purchasing. I don't know if this means more than we think, but I guess we'll find out. If there's anything else on it. I think that they did say they contact United, but there was no response, which you wouldn't expect them to respond on something like this. So yeah, there's you can paint a little bit of a picture, I suppose, based on all of that of what could be the case with Garnacho. But yeah, some interesting stories on the whole for the week that really paint a picture. I think that the general gist that I have of the last week of news and everything that I've been hearing as well is we want a striker, and we're starting to narrow down our top targets. And I feel as though we're ready to move on to Liam Delap and get him done. If say we got knocked out by Lyon in a couple weeks, we'd be like, let's get Delap done. That's how I feel that it's going. Um, I've got my own concerns with that. I'm going to put out a video on why we shouldn't sign Liam Delap later. That is actually a more balanced take, but I'll put that out a bit later today because I already made it. But then if we do win another round in Europa and we're looking like favorites and we're looking like we're a couple wins away from winning it, then that could change things quite a bit. And obviously we might start to look at more some of these other options. But I think we want to have our ducks in a row for worst case scenario at this point in time on that. The striker thing's obviously a subject. There's a decent amount of talk about Garnacho as a subject as well. And then beyond that, there's not a ton. Obviously, the attack is the biggest priority. That's the truth. At the baseline numbers, United want to get 2 forwards in. And worst case scenario, we want to be able to spend enough to get a couple of forwards in. Um, so I think that about covers all of the weekly stories. There's a report from Turkey that said us and Arsenal have made official offers for Osimhen. I don't believe that. That's why I didn't cover it because well, not just not believe it. I'm fairly confident that isn't true. Is Wilcox's infatuation with the lap also shared by other scouts? Lamb Delap is someone who is looked at really well in football, but I'm sure it's not a one-person decision because it's not how United work. So I'm sure there are other people involved. I have plenty of doubts, but that being said, like I said in a video earlier this week, I really do think we're okay to trust them a little bit, give them a little bit of a benefit of the doubt on some of this. They haven't screwed us over so far. I think we're actually doing quite okay on the signings and names and things that we have. So that's what I've got for today. But I have my doubts. So yeah, let's end it there. I think that was good. I think that keeps it nice and succinct, so it's not too long. But that's what I've got for today. That's what I have for this video. I hope it was interesting. Again, if you're watching this over on YouTube, definitely come join on Big Up next time and come check it out. And for all of you here, thank you for spending time with me. Thank you for hanging out. Thank you for taking part in today's stream. I will have some more stuff later and watch along on Sunday. So again, thank you for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications on if you're on YouTube. Come follow on Big Up and Joined, and I will see you all later. Have a good one.